Thank you. It's nice to see you all here, even though it's an eve of a holiday. And I feel honored you could try to come here than someplace else. Now notice that if you really want to seek, you have to read all things. One time, I was reading a particular magazine and someone came near me, another chiropractor, and he said to me, "You read that magazine?" I said, "I do." He said, "That magazine's no good." I said, "How do you know?" He said, "I know." "How do you know?" "I know." I said, just because I read a particular magazine doesn't mean to say I'm going to carry its tag. I like to know how other people are thinking. And how do I know whether it's so good as you said, or it is good, unless I investigate? So I've investigated many things. And when I found the WASPI, it was a new Bible. It came in 10 years before chiropractic. So I just sat up every night and read one chapter. And it took me a whole year to finish the book. But I did it. And this is where I got that expression from. Came from a Bible. That medicine is a battle axe of Satan. Yeah. Now if I didn't read a WASPI, I wouldn't have understood that. But even then, I didn't exactly know how it was the battle axe of Satan. Now I know. Now, as I have told you, that we live in a risk environment, meaning abnormal. No matter what we do, we have to counteract it in order to survive. And Newton was right. He never said action, reaction. Newton always said action, counteraction. Now, as I told them last night, that a helicopter that goes straight up, if it didn't have a counteractor, it would just flop to one side. So if you notice, sometimes when you're close enough to a helicopter, that it has another motor in the back, which revolves in the opposite direction to keep it somewhat balanced. Do you know that even in us, we have counteractors? Do you know that the counteractors in us, I didn't have this last night, but I got it this morning, are the semicircular canals. And what do the semicircular canals are attached to? Sound, tone. Got it? So Dee told us that the basic principle of chiropractic is tone. But Dee didn't know that this generation was on the way out. And so a new tone had to come in. And sometimes, not too long ago, Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier. And when he did that, he did us a favor. First Earth Adam, then Heaven Adam. Now that means we could go further. And as I told them last night, the Wright brothers, sometime in the early 1900s, about 8 years later than chiropractic, built what they can call an aeroplane. But they had to have a special motor. And nobody would make the motors for them. And guess what? They built their own motor. Now they had no trouble with the motor. It was a fuselage that gave them trouble. But finally, for about 15 to 90 seconds, first flight was about 15 minutes, then the next one was 90 seconds, and there it goes. Now, if people in aeronautics would have stuck only to what the Wright brothers knew, where would airplanes be today? No place. No place. But they knew how to go on a drawing board. They knew how to do this, that, and the other thing. The engineers. And look at what we have. Not only what we have just sent something to Mars. And if the Wright brothers didn't do what they did then, we would have never sent anything to Mars. And if they didn't do what he did then, we would never progress. But did we progress? Or did we get stuck in the mud? Yeah, we got stuck in the mud. And since we couldn't answer the questions that the scientific community gave us, we start sliding back into the battle axe of Satan. And we go to Albany, begging them to give us permission to do this, that, and the other thing. When on earth, or in heaven, or in any part of this cosmos, do we need permission to do God's work? When? Never. When you use medicine which has a risk connected to it, sure you got to have to be licensed. I'm sure you must be watched over. We don't need that. We are far superior than that. And today we hear that we're going to give a seminar in philosophy, chiropractic philosophy. When you get there, it is purely commercialism. And some places may read a few passages from what we call the Green Books. It was all right for then, but it's not all right for now. Now remember, it's always change, change, change. If farmer has a good crop,